Yo, what's up? This is Randy. I am coming to you from an amazing, super inspirational location. I'm at Pfeiffer Beach in Big Sur, California. Check it out. This is that huge hole in the rocks over here. Anyway, just kind of wanted to give you a little update on what's been going on because a lot of exciting things have happened recently. I can't really kind of mention particulars, but I've had some great conversations with producers, and that's exciting. And there's even been talks about money from certain funds that are in locations that we need to shoot. My film takes place in a tropical location, so it needs to be someplace in the South Pacific or in the Bahamas, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, something like that. And a producer that I have worked with many times in the past, specifically actually the very beginning of my career, which is really cool. Kind of like we got back in touch because I've been basically talking to everybody, and we've been having some really interesting locations. She's a really kind of like boots on the ground type producer, has been in the business for a long time, understands how I like to work. So, these kind of things really work out well. And I'm hoping that things work out, with her, frankly. So that's cool. And she read the script and she really loved it, which is really awesome too. I mean, to make something, to spend as much time as I did writing it, even though it was relatively quickly, it's a lot of heart and soul and effort that goes into something, and hearing that somebody likes something is still really nice. I'm not immune to that sort of flattery, even though in the past I've kind of done my best to kind of like, let it roll off. Now I'm in the different stage of my life, and I'm like, okay, cool, I appreciate that. So anyway, so she really liked the script, which is great. And she also came to the table with, some contacts that she has in certain places where we might be potentially shooting it with money, which all of a sudden, the idea of the fact that there could be a direct link to money, like, makes this thing real in a way that I frankly hadn't really imagined yet. I've been being as positive as I possibly can, speaking with the power of manifestation to, as if it's happening, and that's cool. But then recently, once I had this conversation with her, and she has somebody that, like a reservoir of money from these places to make things, like, all of a sudden it became real in a way that I kind of like, it like made me nervous in the best possible way. It made me nervous that like all of a sudden now the change of focus from how do I get producers involved, what talent do I need, how do I get money and things like that, like it kind of changed a little bit to more like, okay, how am I going to make certain scenes happen? How is this thing actually going to come together? Which is a totally different hat than the writer's hat, where it's like, okay, how do I write the best thing I possibly can? How do I make this as entertaining as possible? So, I have to say, I mean, it was like a little bit nerve-wracking to hear that, but I'm not really a nervous person, so it wasn't like a bad thing. It was really just more like, okay, wow, I'm actually making this thing. I've been saying that I've been making it, I've been believing that I've been making it, but now it's actually going to be made. So what now? And that's cool. And that kind of like brings me to kind of what I've been up to over the past few days, and will be probably doing for the foreseeable future, which is basically kind of like teasing out the script between, scenes of like dialogue and kind of just like easy places, conversations, people walking through the wilderness, anything that's just kind of like a normal thing that you can possibly shoot goes in one bucket. And the see you later, I don't need to pay attention to you now bucket. And then the whole other bucket that's way more challenging is kind of like all the shots that are not like that, which are like shots with the creature in it, shots with an airplane in it, fight scenes, various other gore, blood effects, prosthetics, and things like that. And what I've been doing is kind of just like basically writing them out on a pad. Here's this scene, and then kind of like writing out how I would put those scenes together, almost like editing it in advance, you know? Imagining shot by shot what I'd need to shoot, but it's a little bit different because it's not like, okay, I need a wide shot, I need a medium shot, I need a close-up. I'm not talking about coverage, because when you're talking about, you know, shooting a monster eating somebody, which I have in the script, you know, it can't just be that blasé. It can't be that general. It has to be really specific in terms of how is the scene going to cut together so that I can actually just see specific parts of it, and the math of the whole scene kind of like works together in order to create the effect that I want. A great example of this is American Werewolf in London. There's a great scene where he turns into a werewolf, and it still kind of really holds up. It's a really interesting scene. It's really interesting to look at all the various pieces of when he turns into the werewolf the first time, because it's in daylight, you know, it's inside of an apartment in light. And it's really cool because, you know, there's a scene of his hand extending out, there's a scene of his face extending out, there's a scene of hair growing, then there's like a wide shot of him laying on his back where like you see his torso and things like that. And then in a really funny way, there's also a scene where he breaks the fourth wall and looks at the camera, which is interesting, really interesting. I don't know that I like it, or I would do that for my script. I wouldn't, but I think it's interesting. But anyway, when you go back and look at the scene like that, you can really kind of like try to understand the math behind a scene. Like what shot plus what shot plus what shot plus what shot equals whatever the variable is that you're going for. Whether that variable is, you know, where the sum is fear, weirdness, you know, gross out gore, you know, excitement, shock. There's any one of those things. So basically what I've been doing is going through all those various scenes and really just kind of figuring out what I'm looking for from that scene, and then what the math is in terms of that addition that I was talking about earlier. And, you know, I think this is going to play, and it's really important for me to do this right now because it plays in really clearly into like the budget for these kind of things. Like, you know, I think, you know, if you can't figure that stuff out beforehand, then you're just spraying and praying, and you're just spending the maximum amount of money and giving yourself the most amount of options. But like, I'm not planning on shooting this thing for the maximum amount of money. This is my first feature, and what I'm going for is to shoot it for the least amount of money so I can be as successful as I possibly can. Because to me, this is the beginning of a career, not just like some like random shit. So that's kind of what I've been doing, and it's been really fun. And that's like the real work, the real directing work. So, you know, it's like there's no escaping that. It must be done. And even though the producer didn't even ask me to do that stuff, I knew that that was the kind of stuff that I need to do in order to best understand what effects I need. You know, let's say you have a creature eating somebody, for example. How do you see that when it comes to the shot? Now, maybe some people want to see a wide shot of the creature grabbing somebody and just eating them. Okay, that's cool. That's one way of doing it. And then you would have to basically say, if I'm shooting it practically, I'd need to have a creature, the full suit, or however you're doing it, or full CG. And then you need to have the character who they're eating, and then you can shoot that in a wide shot, however you do that with blood effects and all kinds of stuff like that. Very complicated wide shot. Or if you want to have it be more close-ups, then the question is, what close-ups are they? Is it a close-up shot of the jaws, close-up shot of certain, like the arm or whatever, the claw, or whatever it is that, you know, your creature is particularly composed of. I'm trying not to give away too much here, because ultimately I hope everybody follows me and more people try to follow this journey in terms of how this kind of stuff gets made. But I also want you guys to be stoked and excited when you finally see it, not just like, hey, this is the final thing, the final result of this, like, you know, YouTube journey. But that's kind of where I'm at. I need to kind of figure out when and if I can start mentioning names about specific things. But I think that this kind of stuff is really interesting. I like the idea of like all this work that goes into it. I've done it on a smaller scale before, But, with smaller scales come smaller budgets, and with bigger scales come bigger budgets. And, it's really easy to kind of like have a runaway budget, and that's not how you have a real career in film. At least I don't yet, and I really kind of don't want to do that either. I think I'd rather think it out in advance, make smart decisions based on what needs to happen and what I want to happen, rather than just, saying, hey, let's just throw all this money at it and get it made. So that's that. Today is the 5th of April. I'm in Big Sur, California. Oh, by the way, I was here on a shoot, not in Big Sur per se, but I was in LA and then in Berkeley for a documentary shoot, my kind of normal directing career. And that stuff was really fun. And yeah, that's it. So thanks for listening, and I hope this is interesting to you, and I hope you stick around for whenever the next one is, whenever there's some kind of update to be had. In the meantime, I'm just going to go take off my shoes and put my feet in the sand and try to enjoy the sun. Peace.